In this video it's a tern extravaganza with one very rare American visitor, one real mega visitor and Britain's rarest breeding seabird. After a rather challenging drive, we arrived near Sea Houses in Northumberland.
Hey folks, we are in Northumberland. We've had a pretty mental journey. We ended up going down a closed road and having to turn the van round, which was... anyway. It's after midnight, it's quite late. We have a busy day tomorrow, but hopefully with some exciting birds. A bit of a tern spectacular, so we're going to be looking first for an American Black Tern that keeps coming back every summer for the last few years, then some Roseate Terns which we need for our year list, and hopefully a real mega in the form of a Bridled Tern. So we've got a boat trip tomorrow hopefully to go out and see that, so keep with us for that. That should be fun. And then after that I don't know what, so could be a really interesting, exciting weekend. Stick with us.
We woke up to a reasonably bright but windy morning.
Morning folks. After a bit of a nightmare getting to a parking spot last night, we actually found it. We didn't get to sleep until nearly 2, so it's now 7 o'clock, so we haven't had a great deal of sleep. But this place we've parked is absolutely lovely. It's not far from our first destination, which is called Long Nanny. We're near a golf course and a nice little stream, as you can see behind me. And there's birds singing in the background, sedge warblers. I've seen a few starlings, a grey heron, loads of sand martins flying past. Absolutely beautiful. I was waiting for Kaylee to be ready and then we're going to set off towards Long Nanny.
After watching this grey heron catch his breakfast, we head out on the road, only for about 10 minutes, towards Long Nanny. Being a little exposed, it was quite windy here.
Hey folks.
Hi.
It's pretty windy, I don't know if you can hear us. It's breezy here, which makes me a bit worried about the boat trip later. But we're heading now towards Long Nanny birding hide, where there's a ranger's hut that looks over a tern colony. And we're hoping that our American Black Tern may be there.
It was about a 20-minute walk through the sand dunes. There were plenty of birds among the sand dunes like this linnet, but what we were after was the tern colony. This colony is home to a few species, but mainly Arctic terns. Hundreds of them breed here, some of them nesting really close to the warden's hut, giving us great views. And although these birds were very showy and great to see, the tern we were after was a rarity, a black tern, but not only this, an American subspecies. And this bird that had been summering here since 2020 had apparently this time paired up with an Arctic tern. One of the other birders pointed out its nest with its partner, a male Arctic tern, sat on it. This bird being quite obscured by vegetation. There was a metal post by the nest to point out where it is, with Nige written on the top, which funnily enough is my name. When we arrived, the black tern wasn't here, it had gone out to sea, but we waited in anticipation for it to return to take over nest sitting duties. And after about 25 minutes of us being there, she was spotted flying over the beach. Although we were hoping for it to come into the nest, she didn't, although she did fly over our heads a few times quite close, giving us really nice views. Eventually coming into land by her Arctic tern mate. She tried to take over the nest from the mate, but he wasn't having any of it for a while, so she flew off. After a while all the other terns took off. We waited, hoping the black tern had come back to take over the nest, but her partner came first. After a short while she returned, sitting next to her partner for a while, and he finally gave up the nest for her as she settled down to look after her eggs. Quite often all the birds would lift off their nests, fly around and then come back. And our black tern returned again to look after her nest. She did for a short moment get a hard time off another tern. I'm not sure if he was displaying to her or trying to take over a nesting site, but she fended him off wonderfully and then settled down back on her eggs. I wonder if these eggs will hatch. I doubt it, but it's an interesting science experiment if nothing else. And with only about 14 accepted records of this rare bird, it was lovely to reacquaint ourselves with this individual that we'd seen on a previous year. But now it was time to head back towards the van.
Hey folks, after a little bit of a wait because she'd gone out to sea, our little black tern came back. She's got a nest. She's got eggs and everything. She was partnered up with an Arctic tern, which I don't know how effective that'll be, but she's enjoying herself and she's come in. She tried to relieve him off the nest, he wasn't having it, so she flew away and then came back and relieved him off the nest.
Over our heads as well.
Unfortunately, I didn't get footage of that because it was quite hard to get in the camera. It was amazing to see, absolutely stunning. So we're going to go off to Amble now. We've got a boat trip at 2:30, so
see if we can get the bridled tern.
see if we can get the bridled tern from a distance. Well, there's a gentleman here who thinks we may not from the boat, but we're going to try anyway, and we need Roseate Tern. So stick with us, this should be a really good afternoon.
We headed back on the path through the sand dunes, at one point being stopped by this skylark that was singing on the path. Now it was time to head to Amble, where we'd booked a boat trip for the afternoon.
Hey folks, we're somewhere by Amble, just south of Amble. We're heading up to some sand dunes where apparently you can see Coquette Island, which is where we're going later to look for the bridled tern, and we might even be able to see it at a far distance. So keeping my fingers crossed, get this one on the bag.
A few people had got sights of the bridled tern from the sand dune opposite Coquette Island. When we arrived, Kaylee set the scope up and we looked out. It was very challenging, with there being a lot of heat haze, and it was very windy. Not only that, the island's over a mile away, so trying to pick out a specific bird is really tough. On a few occasions, some of the other birders said they'd spotted it. I don't think I saw it. If I did, I certainly couldn't have picked it out in the video. We gave up, thinking it was unlikely we were going to see it from such a distance, and headed towards Amble Harbour, where our boat trip was setting off from.
Hey folks, we've just been out to have a look over to the island from some sand dunes, over to Coquette Islands from some sand dunes, where there's loads of people with scopes. Some of them had eyes on the bridled tern briefly, but it's such a long distance away, and there's horrendous heat haze, and it's very windy too. These aren't excuses, these are reasons.
They must have had better scopes than me as well.
Yeah, exactly. I've got something that possibly could be this bird in the camera at a far distance, but I can't really pick it out in the video. Ultimately, we're going on a boat trip in a couple of hours, with real hope that we might get a view from there.
There's a good possibility.
There's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
Let's hope. Anyway, stick with us. We're going to go down towards where we're going to get the boat from and get our tickets and such. So, fingers crossed.
As we had an hour or so wait until our boat trip, we had a look round the harbour. I spotted this group of eider that was swimming around, a male and two females, with the male coming really close in after a while. We decided then to grab a snack from one of the beach huts, a couple of hot dogs and a jalapeno sausage roll. Lovely. We sat on a bench and started eating our dinner, quickly gaining an attentive audience. Some of the local starlings got really close, hoping for crumbs. And unfortunately, pastry does give you crumbs, so the starlings were around my feet, picking off any little bits I dropped. Kaylee got quite attached to one of the younger starlings and called it Frankie. By this time it was nearly time for our boat trip, and we lined up along the dock.
It's gone windy. We're waiting for a boat.
It's very windy.
It's very windy. We're going to get the boat to Coquette Island soon. I'm a bit concerned about my tummy because I get a bit seasick, but let's see what happens.
As many of you seen in previous videos, I'm not the best on the sea. I get quite seasick, so I was a little anxious. But soon enough, we were in the boat and heading out to Coquette Island. It was a full boat, full of some tourists, but quite a few birders, anxious to get views of this very rare bridled tern that had arrived. The sea was reasonably choppy due to it being quite windy, but I hunkered down, put some earplugs in, apparently that helps, and settled in for the short crossing towards the island. As we got nearer to the island, we started seeing more birds on the sea, the most numerous being puffins, with a few on the sea, and then we had an enormous flyby by loads of them. We soon arrived next to Coquette Island, witnessing the massive amount of birds that call this place home. The puffins we'd already seen make up part of about 30,000 pairs that live here. Aside from the thousands of puffins, there's a few other species that call this place home, making Coquette Island an extremely important site for seabirds. Other species that live here include kittiwakes, sandwich terns that you can see here in the group, Arctic terns, and the very important and very rare Roseate Tern, but we'll come back to that species later. Most people on this trip had come to see another tern, a rarity that had arrived from tropical waters, the Bridled Tern. This species is usually found around the equator in much warmer tropical waters, but the individual that had been sighted here arrived in Northumberland at the start of June, and it's attracted some crowds. And the crowded boat full of people were searching through all the birds on the island, hoping to get a glance of this tropical rarity. And with so many eyes looking for it, it didn't take long for one eagle-eyed birder to find it. Although apparently it had been quite mobile on previous days, on this occasion it was sat on a grassy bank. Excellent, we found it. But now there was the problem of trying to get footage. I should have put a disclaimer up at the start of the video. It was quite choppy, so most of my footage is a bit shaky to say the least. Regardless, I did get some shaky video, of which on some occasions I paused to get stills so you can actually see the bird instead of a bit of a shaky mess. And although the video was shaky, we got some great views of this really stunning and very rare visitor. What a privilege. And now back to the other important bird here, the Roseate Tern. This species is Britain's rarest seabird, and this island is the UK's only breeding colony. Luckily I was able to pick a couple out. There is one here in this picture. You can pick it out. It's the bird on the right with the red legs and a black bill. This boat trip had been extremely productive, seeing the Bridled Tern, which is mega rare, and the Roseate Tern, which is Britain's rarest breeding seabird. But now it was time to head back to land, which I was pleased with because I was feeling a little rough. When we arrived back to the harbour, I noticed these female eiders with babies. These females looking after the babies are usually non-breeding females, nicknamed aunties. These very attentive females were looking after a creche of about 16 chicks. I have to mention, during this boat trip and afterwards, we did bump into some of our viewers and subscribers. It was not only lovely to meet you and chat, but thank you for the kind words and encouragement. We really do appreciate it. But now, back to the video.
What did we just see?
We saw a Bridled Tern, which is a lifer.
Yay!
And we also saw a Roseate Tern, which is another one for the year list. Lots of puffins, and I didn't get too seasick.
Which was a good thing.
A little bit, but not a lot. It was a pretty shaky footage, I'm afraid, so most of what we've got is stills from the footage. But we saw them, which is excellent. So that's 3 good terns in one day. Excellent. I don't know what we're doing next, though.
We headed now about an hour and a half away to RSPB Saltholm. But when we arrived, there was a problem.
Hey folks, we've decided to come a little bit down south before it went dark and hopefully have a wander around RSPB Saltholm. Unfortunately though, it's closed. They close up at 5 o'clock and lock the gates. Some RSPB reserves are open from, or the reserves are open from dawn till dusk, but unfortunately not here. So we're going to have to wait now until 9:30 tomorrow morning to get into the nature reserve. The reason we've come here is because today they had a black-crowned night heron and also a marsh warbler. The marsh warbler being a lifer and the black-crowned night heron being another bird for our year list. So we're going to grab some dinner. We're going to cook it in the van actually. Find somewhere to park up, cook some dinner, chill out for a bit and come back here in the morning. See you then.
It was soon to be going dark, so we had to find somewhere to park for the night. We drove about half an hour round the coast to South Gare. This is a little bit of land that juts out into the sea. When we got there it was really windy. We had a short walk before dinner, seeing these turnstones trying to cling onto the rocks. But now it was time for some food.
Hey folks, after not being able to get into Saltholm RSPB, because it was closed, we've come now to South Gare to have some dinner, which Katie's cooking, which smells amazing. What are we having?
Sausage and bean casserole.
Sausage and bean casserole, yum. We're going to head back to Saltholm when it opens at 9:30 tomorrow and try and get the 2 birds that we're looking for there. The marsh warbler, which will be a lifer, and the black ground night heron, which will be a good year tick for us. That's apparently been elusive. Warblers are always elusive. So let's see what happens. Stick with us. We'll see you in the morning.
After a lovely dinner, we soon called it a night. After a reasonably relaxed morning, we headed out back to RSPB Saltholm, and this time it was open.
We finally made it to Saltholm, and there's a few people here. It's just opened. We're heading first, hopefully, to the marsh warbler, and then on to the night heron. If we can find either of the two, that'd be great.
Marsh warbler's what we want.
Marsh warbler's what we want, because that's a lifer. There's a wren singing in my ear. Stick with us. Let's see if we can find any of them.
After the previous day, someone's seeing a marsh warbler, which would be a lifer for us, and a black crowned night heron, which would be great for the year list. We hot-footed it to where the marsh warbler had been seen, but unfortunately it had not been seen yet, or even heard. We stuck around in the area for a short while, seeing a couple of very noisy sedge warblers, but still no marsh warbler. So we followed some other birders and headed towards where the black crowned night heron had been seen.
A bit breezy. We went for attempt 1 at the marsh warbler, but no luck. It's not even singing, no sign of it, nobody's seen it. So we're heading up to where the apparently elusive black crowned night heron is.
They say elusive, they say very elusive.
Yeah, it doesn't fill us with much confidence, but we're going to head there anyway and see what's around. We did hear a grasshopper warbler before, which is nice, but let's see what happens.
Although that morning it had been seen out in the open, previously it had been reported as elusive, so at this point we were feeling a little discouraged. When we arrived at the pool, we were informed that it had been out in the open, but had subsequently gone and stood behind a tree trunk, almost out of sight. A couple of the birders had really good scopes and were able to pick the night heron out. The only part that was generally visible was the back of the bird, with its grey and black feathers. We stuck around for a bit in the hope that it might come out into the open, but it didn't.
The night heron was indeed elusive, extremely elusive. In fact, the most elusive.
It's the most elusive bird I think I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Quite
we
tenuous.
stayed there for a while. A gentleman with a scope, very helpful guy, picked the back of it up in the scope. So I've got a video of the back of the bird, which is the kind of grey and dark feathers.
Circle and put a big, like,
Yeah, I might have to put a big arrow next to it. But that is a night heron. Just to give you an idea, if you've not seen a night heron before, what they look like, I'll put some footage of one I've previously seen. But we've got a little bit of time left, so we're going to go back on the warbler hunt.
So with limited views, but enough to count, we headed back on the warbler hunt. And on the way back towards the marsh warbler spot, we had a treat in the shape of a lovely grasshopper warbler. This one sat on the side of a bush singing its heart out. This kind of made up for our really bad views of the night heron.
Hey folks, it looks like the marsh warbler might have gone.
Yeah,
It's certainly not there anymore, it's not singing, nobody's seen it. But we did get a consolation prize in the shape of a grasshopper warbler, which is beautiful on the edge of a tree. That's a new one for the year list, boom. Don't know what number we're up to now, but it's looking pretty good. Onwards and upwards.
We stuck around a bit for the marsh warbler, but ultimately it wasn't to be seen or even heard. So we headed back through the reserve towards the van. We did stop off a couple of times on the way to the van, firstly at this screen, seeing this little egret that was fishing, and this group of potchard that was sat on the edge of the pool preening. A little bit further up we nipped briefly into a hide. This had a very noisy black-headed gull colony. Probably noisier than normal because they had teenagers.
So in the end we did get to Saltholm and we found one of the birds we were looking for, but the views weren't the best to say the least. We did find the black crowned night heron, but I only saw the back of it.
It's been a good weekend though.
It's been an excellent weekend. We've had a mega, which was a lifer as well in the shape of the Bridled Tern. We've had the American Black Tern at Long
Very
Nanny,
good views of that.
which was excellent.
Yeah.
What else? Roseate Terns.
Yep.
We did have the black crowned night heron, a grasshopper warbler, new bird for the year. It's stunning.
Really good.
It's brilliant. Thanks so much for watching. Please like,
Please subscribe.
and please press the notification bell. We will see you on the next adventure. Thanks for your support. Bye bye.